The year before a new console release is always a strange time. On one hand, it feels like a calm before the storm. Developers and companies are bombarding gamers with trailers for new tech and games to show us why the future of gaming is more exciting than anything currently available to us. On the other hand, however, it's a time when developers make one final push to deliver on projects they've been working on for years before the market simply moves on. This often leads to swan song titles such as Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us Part 2. This duality of calm and excitement is one gamers know well, as they revel in the best games of a generation while keeping one eye fixated on the future. The year 2012 was no different. With the Xbox One and PS4 on the horizon the following year, developers dropped their long-awaited games onto gamers everywhere for their attempt to be the last great game of a generation. This is where the original Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning came into play. With heavy hitters attached to the project, such as Todd McFarlane, Ari Salvatore, Grant Kirkhope, and even Major League Baseball pitcher Curt Schilling, the game looked as though it had everything in place to make its mark on the industry. However, with the highly anticipated release of Mass Effect 3 launching less than a month later, the game's initial impact needed to be a massive one. And while it did garner a large cult following at the time, the game did not hit the height of greatness it aimed to achieve. Which leads us to 2020. THQ Nordic has acquired the property and released an updated version of the game for modern consoles. Oddly, yet again dangerously close to the launch of a new console generation. But how does it fare this time around? My name is War with Horsemen Gaming. Let's get into it. Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning is a strange game to review, so we're going to do it in two ways. First, we're simply going to talk about the game itself and how it performs in its own merits. Then we'll cover how it fares as a remaster and the expectations that come with that label. For starters, the game is a fantastic experience that has a deep and rich lore to it with a unique art style that holds up even today. You begin the game as your hero is slain on the battlefield, only to be resurrected minutes later as a fateless being, one the likes of which the world has never seen. You alone are not only in control of your own destiny, but seemingly the entire realms. This newfound power is not only limited to yourself, however. You have the ability to unweave others from their set fate, which excites some and horrifies others. It all drips with a thick Tolkien-esque storytelling style, so if you're into that sort of thing, there's definitely a ton to dig into here. It's pure high fantasy. Dwarves, elves, wizards, immortal beings, they're all present and accounted for. Adding to the great storytelling and world building is a strong art design that comes coupled with it. Elven races look both elegant and brutal depending on their background. Humans and dwarves can be both noble or rough around the edges in a realistic way. Not to be mistaken, this is no Witcher, but there's a charm to the world that is undeniable once it pulls you in. The world building, story, and art style on display here work nearly perfectly in tandem to create a truly magical experience. Music and sound design help here as well. The voice work is great and holds up just as strongly today as it did originally. Most NPCs sound authentic and are voiced well in contrast to your silent hero. The audio tracks that flutter in the background are whimsical and pair excellently with the mood displayed on the screen. But what if you don't care anything about the lore or all these fictional characters jabbering at you? Luckily, the game's got you covered there too. It provides you with a skip option for both dialogue and cutscenes so that you can get straight back into the action. But being the Fateless one comes with additional perks outside of simply story implications. Having no set destiny means the player is able to mold their hero into exactly the character they want them to be. This game has you covered no matter what your playstyle may be. There's 3 unique ability trees to work through, and whether you want to be a powerhouse soldier, a magic-flinging mage, or even a stealthy rogue, the options are all available for you. You can further build on your own individual style by leveling skills such as alchemy, blacksmithing, and smooth-talking persuasion so that you have a better chance of getting your way in conversations. There's also a destiny system in place in which you select a card to further increase certain talents such as ranged or magic damage. Added to that, there's tons of weapons with various perks and effects to further deepen the combat. You roll into battle with 2 weapons equipped at a time, and whether they be a sword and shield, speedy daggers, a staff to cast spells, or even a pair of chakrams, which behave much like the Blades of Chaos from God of War. Since each weapon is tied to a single button input, players are encouraged to experiment in battle with all manner of tactics. This adds a ton of replayability and keeps combat varied. It's a great pairing of both simple and complex mechanics working together in harmony, and it makes for a great time. Adding even more to your choice in battle is the hero's Reckoning mode, an ability that slows time and allows you to deal massive damage to enemies around you with the added reward of netting you bonus experience if you nail that final QuickTime event at the end. It all sounds like a lot to take in, but it's surprisingly simple and intuitive while taking nearly no effort to learn. Combat is simply fun on a basic level, and one of the strongest points Kingdoms of Amalur has to offer. And it's a good thing that this game is fun, because it is a long game. The world is massive and NPCs can throw so many side quests at you at once, it can be blinding at times. Here you'll have main quests, faction quests, side quests, tasks to complete. It just keeps building upon itself. While you should be able to power through the main storyline if you put on blinders in around 40 hours, the completionist side can easily clock you in at over the 100-hour mark, which is a good thing in a game with so many options to build your character. You'll want that XP, but it can be a little daunting for completionists. There's also a satisfying loot grind to play with here. There's your standard tiers of drops, and most designs look great, whether it's a flaming greatsword strapped to your back or a set of emerald armor covering your body. There's even gold set pieces that offer set bonuses for players who can obtain the full set. It's RPG looting at its finest in this regard. Not all is perfection in Kingdoms of Amalur, however, as this game does originate from 2012, and honestly, it'll never let you forget this fact, even for a moment. While the creative art style still holds up, on a technical level the graphics just don't hit in a way that they did in their original release. The open fields look noticeably sparse, textures are bland at times, and facial animations often look like something from the original Xbox or PS2 era, more than they do for something being played on a modern console. Also, while the combat is extremely fun and simple, there is a dated feel to it that's hard to shake. It's easily something that can be compared to the original Fable with a dash of Dragon Age 2 thrown in. They're not bad games in terms of control, but definitely not on par with the games of today. A simple lock-on system would have went a long way in this game. Coming from modern titles where something as simple as a lock-on is a standard, it's hard to get accustomed when having it taken away from you again. Here, once combat kicks off, the camera somewhat pans back, allowing you to see further around your character while somewhat staying focused on the action. It's not terrible, but much like everything else in this game, it's dated and definitely takes time getting used to. So in its own right, the game has an interesting story and has plenty to offer players for more than 100 hours, a unique graphical style, coupled with great sound design, and a ton of option for players in terms of combat and customization. Overall, it sounds pretty good, right? Of course it does. The issue is that's just the review of the original game that we were presented with back in 2012. This is a remaster, and we cannot forget that aspect. This is where the real issue lies, just how little has been updated here. Graphics have really been left untouched. So fans looking for that Fable Anniversary or Master Chief Collection treatment out of this game, you're really not going to find it. Though it's obviously crispier, you'd be hard-pressed to see any real major differences between this game and its original release, especially if playing on PC. The game even has a ton of screen tears and moments where it drops frames, which is mind-boggling on a nearly 10-year-old game built for previous generation hardware. The unique art style does help keep the game looking great, but this is not a remaster in the terms that gamers have grown to expect in this day and age, which is disappointing as this game is a gem and deserved that effort. You can map 4 additional skills than you used to be able to, which is an upgrade. There's a field of view slider if you're playing on PC, and you're now able to map the run button to the left stick if you prefer that, as opposed to holding a face button down like in the original. Other than those changes, the original experience was nearly left completely untouched. There is completely new DLC content planned for the game, titled Fatesworn, that is scheduled to be released later down the road in 2021. So now we come to the ultimate question. Is the game worth purchasing, and how would you put a score on something like this? While on one hand, the game only costs $39.99 or $54.99 if you opt for the Fate Edition, which comes bundled with the upcoming DLC. However, you could just as easily pick up the same game for less than $20 if you went and bought a used copy of the original. If you already own the title, there's really no reason to purchase this updated version other than the fact that you'll get some new achievements and trophies, and perhaps the promise of the upcoming DLC of unknowable quality. Perhaps the best overall place to look if you're aiming to upgrade to this newer version of the game is on Steam. Here, if you already own the original title, you'll receive an additional 60% off the cost of upgrading for a limited time. But once again, PC is the platform in which you'll see the least amount of upgrade for your money. If you're simply looking for something fun to dive into until the new console releases hit later this year, or you've simply never played the original, Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning has a lot to offer. There's an old school charm to the game that's held strong through the test of time, and the game easily stands on its own today as an 8.5. But if you've already completed the game in the past and were looking for an exciting update in terms of controls and visuals, then you'll be disappointed at what's offered here, outside of maybe the promise of the upcoming Fatesworn. If you fall into this category, perhaps wait on a sale. As a remaster, the game is a bit lazy, and I wouldn't give it anything higher than a 6. One final positive note I do have to mention is the developers did include the original game's DLC for Commander Shepard's armor from Mass Effect, and it is still awesome. But that's just our opinion. What do you think? Are you a diehard Amalur fan that's been aching to get back into the world, or are you skeptical and waiting for more looks at the game? We'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to hit subscribe as we have a ton more content headed your way. As always, I have been War, this has been Horsemen Gaming, and we'll see you next time.